This is a podcast about understanding counseling and how it works in everyday life. In this episode, we'll explore why decisions begin to feel easier when internal pressures reduce and how that shift changes everyday judgment in quiet but important ways. Many people assume decisions feel difficult because the choice itself is complex. In reality, most decisions are not especially complicated. What makes them feel heavy is the pressure surrounding them. The pressure to get it right, the pressure to avoid regret, the pressure to make a decision that won't create problems later. When internal pressure is high, decisions stop being about the situation in front of you and start being about what the decision represents, what it might say about you, what it might lead to, and what it might risk. You can feel this in very ordinary moments, deciding whether to respond to a message now or later, whether to agree to something you're unsure about, whether to raise an issue or let it pass. The choice itself may be simple, but it feels charged. This happens because internal pressure narrows attention. Instead of seeing the full context, the mind focuses on potential consequences. It rehearses outcomes, it scans for mistakes. The system treats the decision as something that must be resolved carefully rather than responded to naturally. Earlier in the series, we explored how responsibility and identity can become closely linked. Decisions feel heavier when they are tied to self definition. Saying yes or no doesn't just feel like a choice, it feels like a statement about who you are and how reliable you need to be. As internal pressure reduces, something important changes. Decisions don't become effortless, but they become more proportionate. The system no longer treats every choice as high stakes. There's more room to think, pause, and respond. This often shows up first in timing. People notice they don't rush decisions in the same way. They allow themselves a moment to consider without feeling behind or guilty. That pause isn't hesitation, it's space. In that space, different information becomes available. How something actually feels, whether the decision aligns with current capacity rather than long term expectation, whether the cost of saying yes outweighs the benefit. Another change is how people relate to imperfection. When internal pressure is high, decisions are judged harshly. Any outcome that isn't ideal feels like failure. When pressure reduces, decisions are allowed to be workable rather than perfect. This shift alone can make decision making feel lighter. You're no longer deciding for a future version of yourself who must cope flawlessly. You're deciding for the person you are now in the present with the capacity you currently have. You may notice this in how you respond when things don't go as planned. Instead of replaying the decision repeatedly, you adjust, you adapt, you move forward. The decision no longer defines the outcome. Reduced internal pressure also changes how advice from others is received. Opinions can be heard without feeling binding. Suggestions can be considered without obligation. You don't have to justify your choices much, either to others or to yourself. Counseling supports this process by helping people notice where pressure is coming from, not by offering answers, but by clarifying what's inflating the importance of the decision. When pressure is understood, it often loosens without effort. Over time, people find that decision making becomes quieter. There's less internal debate, less second guessing, not because decisions matter less, but because they no longer dominate the internal space. Another subtle shift is how people relate to indecision. Instead of treating indecision as failure, it becomes a signal. Something may need more time, or the decision may not actually be required yet. The That perspective reduces frustration and the self-criticism that can come along at times. As resilience develops, decisions are made, revisited, and adjusted with less emotional charge. Life continues to involve uncertainty, but uncertainty no longer freezes movement. Understanding why decisions feel easier when internal pressure reduces helps explain why progress often shows up behaviorally before it feels emotional. You may not feel dramatically different, but you act with more ease and less strain. Coming up in the next episode, we'll keep building on this by looking at how